We can begin by noticing something that has been present for a long time, something so familiar that it often slips beneath attention, not because it is hidden, but because it has shaped the background of how the universe is usually described. For more than a century, physics has offered two clear and reliable ways of understanding reality, and we have grown comfortable holding both at once, even though, when we slow down and listen carefully, they sit beside each other without ever fully meeting. One view presents a universe that feels continuous and calm, where space and time form a single structure, and where gravity acts through curvature, guiding motion along natural paths. Alongside this, there is a second view of the universe that behaves very differently, where particles appear as potential states, where outcomes are not fixed in advance, and where uncertainty is woven into the behavior of matter itself. In this view, reality unfolds through probabilities, and events take shape only when conditions allow them to settle. Both descriptions are precise, and both have been confirmed through careful study, which is why their separation matters. This is not confusion or error, but two dependable ways of seeing the same world that remain slightly offset from one another. Instead of feeling like a flaw that demands repair, this division can feel more like a pause in understanding, a quiet interval where something remains unfinished. Not broken, not absent, just simply open, as if the universe is allowing space for a deeper way of looking to emerge. As we stay with that pause, some of us begin to sense that the question itself might be ready to shift, that asking what space is made of may not reach far enough, and that it could be more useful to ask what allows space to arise in the first place. From this change in perspective, nothing new was added to the universe, but something subtle was adjusted in how it was approached. Attention moved away from material description and toward relationship, toward the patterns that connect systems before any structure becomes visible. Entanglement entered the discussion not as an exception or a puzzle, but as something central, suggesting that space does not exist first and then become occupied, but takes shape as systems share information, as parts of the universe become linked in ways that cannot be explained through distance alone. In this view, closeness is no longer defined by meters or light years, but by depth of connection, by how much systems know about each other, and how closely their histories and futures are aligned. Regions rich in shared information behave as if they are near, while regions with little shared structure appear far apart, not because they travel away from each other, but because the link between them weakens. Space, in this sense, reflects relationship, expanding or feeding in response to how strongly systems remain connected. Seen this way, space begins to feel less like a fixed backdrop and more like an expression of connection, something that forms and reforms as relationships change. There is a quiet familiarity in this idea, because long before equations described it, humans sensed that the world was held together through relationship. As this view of a connected universe begins to take shape, something gentle comes into view, not because it has been missing, but because it has rarely been spoken about directly: the observer. Quantum physics already shows us that observation matters, that measuring a system is not the same as reading a number, but involves taking part in how an outcome appears. And yet, when we speak about connection shaping space itself, awareness is often treated as if it touches only the surface, never reaching into the deeper structure beneath. This caution is understandable, because including the observer has long felt uneasy for science, as though it softens the boundary that was carefully maintained. Objectivity came to rest on distance, on the idea that the universe could be fully described without reference to the one doing the describing. And still the question stays with us. If space arises from connection, and if observation alters connection, then it becomes natural to wonder whether awareness might also play a role in shaping the conditions from which space emerges, not as control, not as command, but simply as presence. This is where the idea known as the observer correlation bias begins to take shape. Not as a bold claim, but as a careful suggestion. It does not say that awareness creates reality, or that consciousness can bend the universe to human wishes. Ideas like that tend to fall apart as soon as we analyze them closely. Instead, it offers something much quieter, that awareness may slightly tilt the web of relationships that already exist, leaning possibilities rather than choosing outcomes, much like warmth affects motion without deciding direction. Here is the core of the idea. When awareness enters a system, it becomes part of the system's information. The system now has one more organized presence to account for. Nothing breaks, nothing jumps. The overall balance simply shifts a little. In this view, awareness becomes a parameter, not something outside the system, not something above it, just another factor within it. The rules of physics remain the same, the limits of quantum theory are respected, and nothing dramatic is required. The change is small, but meaningful, because the observer is no longer treated as an outsider, but as a player, already taking part in what is unfolding. At this depth, opposites do not compete, they simply meet. If this idea carries meaning, it would not appear as a sudden event or a clear turning point. It would not show itself in a single moment where reality seems to change, or as a result that could be isolated in one experiment and pointed to with certainty. Its presence would be far quieter than that. It would appear as a small shift in patterns, something that becomes noticeable only across many observations, the kind of change that fades in any single moment, yet slowly becomes visible as results accumulate over time. This is what keeps the idea grounded. The observer correlation bias does not suggest broken laws or unexpected outcomes, only slight changes in likelihood, changes that remain within established limits and respect the structure of known physics. If awareness is itself an organized process, then its presence may help certain patterns remain stable while others soften, not through force or direction, but through simple participation within the system. There is no need to agree with this, or even feel drawn to it, for it to be worth considering. Its strength lies in the fact that it can be tested, and that it allows for the possibility of being wrong. At this depth, the observer is not central or privileged, but simply included, one process among many within a universe that appears increasingly connected the closer it is examined. When we step back and take in this idea more fully, it begins to echo patterns that humans have noticed for a long time, not as formal beliefs, but as shared intuitions about how inner experience and the outer world seem to move together. Carl Jung spoke of the inner world and the outer world as reflections, not identical, but shaped by similar patterns, guided by structures that appear both in the mind and in the world around it. In a similar spirit, older traditions spoke of guiding principles, not as figures or objects, but as processes, as the quiet order behind how things take form, shift, and return. Modern physics uses a different language, speaking of information, connection, and structure. Yet the movement feels familiar, as if the same questions are being approached from a clearer angle. Even the idea of collapse softens here, no longer sounding like a sudden break, but more like a moment of selection, where one possibility becomes clear while others recede. Much like attention in everyday life, which does not bring the world into existence, but shapes what comes into focus and what quietly fades from view. There is no need to hurry towards an answer here, and no need to decide what any of this finally means. Experiments are being considered, measurements discussed, and there remains ample room for this idea to be questioned, refined, or even set aside. And that openness is part of what gives it strength. What we are doing is not solving a problem, but learning how to stay with the question, how to remain present as it unfolds, becoming clearer in some moments and quieter in others. Nothing needs to change after this. We do not need to think differently, or see differently, or arrive at a new conclusion. It is enough to notice that the universe may not be a closed system running on its own, but a living pattern that already includes our presence, simply because we are part of how it is observed. Not separate from what unfolds, not standing apart from it, but included, quietly as everything continues.